Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast is about the journey to a more sustainable future in order for us to be able to do our bit to achieve net zero. I'll be discussing a variety of topics with experts in their field in order to educate and increase our knowledge of clean energy, electric vehicles and the electric vehicle infrastructure. So whether you're an individual wanting to make a difference at home, a small business or a corporate, this podcast is just for you. So today on the podcast, I've got the wonderful Sara Sloman, who is, and I'm going to read this, Director of Future Fleet at Paythru and Project Director at the EV Café.
Oh,
thank you for joining me.
For having me. I'm so glad to be here. I've been waiting to come on, so I'm delighted.
Yeah, and you're not last from the EV Café anyway, are you? So that's good.
No, that'll be Johnny Berry, I suspect.
It will be. Oh my goodness. So it's just so lovely to see you. And we met in person a few weeks ago at the EV show, didn't we?
Yeah, the London EV show at the Excel, that was fantastic. I was so happy to be there, not only with Paythru, but also EV Café, because we got to moderate basically the whole of day 2, looking at how future technologies are changing the landscape for us in the EV market.
Yeah, and I sat in on your kind of discussion, which was absolutely brilliant. So it was just great to see all of you guys up there and the experience that you've got and just how you work together as a team. It was fabulous. But I'm going to talk about you. This is about you today. So your career's been very much in future mobility, hasn't it? So zero emissions, sustainability within councils and cross industry. So how did you get into this sector and what was it that attracted you to it?
Yeah, I'm one of those sickening people that has always had a little bit of a vision about what they wanted to do. I can remember being a child poring over my father's diagrams. He was an engineer, civil engineer, mapping out road networks. And he used to bring home these catalogues of street bollards and furniture for making walking and cycling more safe in a city. And that really triggered something in me, as did the Rio Summit of 92, watching all those leaders shouting at each other about what they're going to do or not do. And I just devoted my whole education and career to finding out more. How can we develop sustainably? So it's not about halting everything. It's about how do we get to where we need to be or want to be for kind of diversity and inclusion and happiness, but at the same time, not ruining the planet that we live on. I've always been really inspired by that. And then another key moment was Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth. If anybody hasn't read that, it's just about the fact that we need to accept change is coming, but there's lots of measures that we need to deploy from sort of top down, unfortunately, but a bit more stick than carrot. So yeah, walking and cycling was where it started, and then that very naturally evolved into kind of public transport and buses and working with businesses to ask their employees how to change their behaviours to make sure that the cities in which they're thriving in aren't being congested as a result. And then that very naturally led to EV after that. So yeah, government money, putting infrastructure in about EV charging. And now I've jumped the fence, very proud to be Director of Future Fleet at Paythru, trying to tackle that middleware piece, the fact that when you go to a charger and it works perfectly, except you can't get the app to work, you can't get the payments to work, connectivity is terrible, which means you can't get a charge. And I identified that as an issue in the market, so I was delighted to join James O'Neill and the team. We're trying to solve that problem.
So that's what middleware is then. So it's kind of like, it is what it says on the tin, really.
That's how I think of it, as a it's a fintech company. We specialise in developing that software and that payment process. So a payment service provider is what we technically are, but we're very skilled in the sense that we can create an app which is better for the user. So we put that sort of user experience at the heart of it. If you're using it, how would you like it to function? And then serving the businesses that need to be paid. So it's an incredibly simple process that can be so complicated, unnecessarily so. And I'm just inspired by the fact that with these brilliant minds who are behind the scenes at the company, we can reach out to all of the charge point operators and try to make that customer experience better, because EV drivers at the moment, where we are on the adoption curve, we can be fussy, right? If we don't get a good experience at one charge point operator, we will just go somewhere else. We're not loyal at all. And so, if we're all going to make profit out of this clean technology, we have to have technology underneath it, the software that supports that. And so, yeah, that's why I was inspired to go there.
Oh, brilliant. And you've had a few, I've seen in your posts and things like that you've had a few experiences, haven't you, with your EV and getting the charge? Because are you in quite a remote area, or is it just that you kind of travel to different remote areas?
Oh, absolutely both. And I really don't believe in sugarcoating. I don't think there's any progress in sugarcoating, and we need to move faster, right? If we're going to make this happen, we need to work collaboratively, but also faster. And I like to use my experience. So an early adopter of EV is someone that might have a driveway or a sort of an affluence level that they can afford the EV and happily adopt it. That's changed now. It's becoming more mainstream. But I live rurally. I don't have a home charger. The nearest rapid charger was 12 miles away, but I just discovered one is only 3 miles away the other day. So that's changed everything for me. And I do 30,000 miles a year in my EV. I've also got an electric motorbike now. I cycle as much as I can and use public transport as much as I can. Yeah. So for me, it's about which transport mode best suits. But in order to work that out, we still use apps. We still have to use travel planning tools. And every journey I make is a cost. And that cost has to be reconciled. And I love the idea that if we get this right, we can take away that pain for people choosing the way that they travel and take away the pain of how they're going to pay for it.
Yeah. So how long have you been driving an EV then?
Yeah, I was asked this the other day. So when I was at North Somerset Council, which is definitely one of my favourite jobs I ever had, we had the EV Soul. I like the EV Soul. We got access to the Leafs as well. But I didn't buy my first EV. I didn't need one. Didn't need it for work until 2019, I think it was. And then I had a string of them. So I had the MG ZS EV and I didn't like it. So I gave it back after like 11 months. And then I got the Kia e-Niro 4 Plus, which I fell in love with. The 64 kilowatt hour battery meant it had 300 mile range. All the kids in the back loved it. And now I'm in a Tesla, which has been a whole different world.
Go on, why has it been a different world? Because obviously, you see kind of a Tesla as just this kind of creme de la creme vehicle, don't you? What's the experience? Why is it so different?
I was a massive Tesla snob before as well. I just thought, people with Teslas, they don't know what they've just got their fancy cars and that's it. And now I'm one of them. Like, this is terrible. This is a terrible situation. But at the same time, the reason I elected for it is that the reason it works is this will come to the normal market, but when you plug in your car, you don't do anything. This was like witchcraft to me the first time I saw this. So you drive up to the charger, you plug it in, it knows who you are. It knows that that's your vehicle. It knows how to bill you for the energy that you use. And it gives you a pricing tariff based on whether it's a popular time of day to be using the charger. Ow. So it's just genius. I do nothing. It's a lovely experience because the app and the connectivity within the car goes through to my phone as well. So I know what that car's doing. I know if it's accidentally stopped charging or if the charger has failed. Right. And now all those years of driving electric on the general network, that's been the biggest pain point for me, is that the hardware might be working brilliantly well, but if the software that supports it goes down, if the communication is lost or the charger doesn't start properly or the contact payment device terminal fails, you can't get that electricity even if you're a millionaire. And I just think that's got to be the biggest problem to solve next, is that messaging, communication, support, billing, all that software stuff that I don't yet fully understand. I understand the use case, but I don't understand all the nitty-gritty of how it works. And it's nuts to be at this position in my career and having to learn all of that again. But it's worth it, right? It keeps your brain functioning.
Oh God, yeah. Oh, flipping heck. I mean, I'm just thinking, how do they do it so well compared to what have they done? I'm assuming they've just invested a lot in innovation and technology and research and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but I also think they know what their market wants, right? This is an example of when a software company makes a car, not when a car company tries to dabble in software. So you can have either the Kia e-Niro 4 Plus is an amazing machine, and I love engineering, I love cars, I love anything automotive. But when I used that touch screen, part of my soul died. It was just the ultra haptics on the screen. It wasn't sensing my finger properly. And that's one of the best cars on the market at the time. Whereas I got in the Tesla and just went, this is a robot car. I call it my daughter and I call it the robot car. I'm like, shall I start the robot car? And I tap on my app and then it's all warmed up and it's got the music playing when we get in. It's just crazy. And she loves it. And I like the idea. The first time I saw Toddington Harper from GridServe speak was at a London EV show some 3-4 years ago now. And I was sat in the front row and he was saying that his children have never known anything other than an electric car. And I remember challenging him on this, going, you say that, they've known anything other than a very expensive electric car. The rest of us are not going to be able to show our kids that. But already in, the sort of the 5-year time span of my daughter now being 9, she also will probably not really understand anything other than electric cars and walks around the streets going, ooh, stinky diesel and petrol oil growth. It's lovely.
And it is It's like that. I mean, so I've got I can't remember the name of this thing that I have, but I've got a really, really extra sensitive sense of smell. So if it's really cold, kind of a winter day, how it's been so cold lately. But we're filming this in December, by the way. So it was the real kind of sub-zero temperatures. And if I'm walking and a diesel car goes past me, I'm just that's just horrible, So yeah, I think actually having a different life where we're going out and actually not experiencing those horrible stinks, from petrol and diesel cars, will just make a massive difference to people. Your children's age, my son's age, who's 17, he's learning to drive in a petrol vehicle. And it's a manual, because I've kind of said to him, look, you need to kind of do this, because otherwise you can't, if you drive drive an automatic, you can't drive a manual if you ever have to. So, I think there's a lot of change happening, isn't there, that's going to affect them moving forwards.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter where you centre your argument around electric. For me, it's about clean air. I mean, there's still a long way to go to make it entirely sustainable. But then whenever did anybody think that single occupancy vehicle use was ever sustainable, whether that's delivery or for your own private use? So we just need to work out how to best utilise cities and that kind of micro-mobility fed into the standard EV. But for me, the clean air argument never goes away. People say to me, oh, but the global impact of creating all of these EVs and all of these batteries that you need for your industry. So I get these trolls and on a quite regular basis, and I just constantly revert back to the same thing, which is none of us are trying to take each other out. This is about progressing through to where we can happily walk down the street and know that we're not having tiny, tiny particles entering our brain, our lungs, our liver, places that you don't see. We know from health campaigns that behaviour change takes a very long time. It can take up to 18 months for a message to even go in that somebody needs to think about changing. We know from the fag packets that had the rotten lungs and the teeth falling out and the mouth ulcers, it didn't stop anyone from smoking. It still doesn't. But it shows us that if you go around saying, oh, green, clean, better for the environment, it kind of just falls on deaf ears if you're that way inclined. But when you say you will have little bits of stuff that's floating around your blood and will enter your brain and probably cause you problems in your later life, suddenly people are like, not sure I like that. And it seems unfair to me as well that we're encouraging walking and cycling when there's still so many diesel and petrol cars on the road. I remember cycling through Bath, turning up at university, a great life-changing moment, and almost being sick. I was choking because I felt so congested I couldn't catch my breath because of the pollution. This is crazy. And I then did my entire sort of devotion to trying to build a cycle path, and I didn't get anywhere with it. It exists now. So this just shows me that the change is coming, and it's just coming in an organic way, which I just love. So the more we talk about it, the more great people like you put your neck out and do these podcasts, and how far we can reach just to say we're not in a mission to change everything you're doing. We're just trying to make what you're doing cleaner and better for you. We're not trying to make people's lives harder.
Yeah, I mean, so my husband, he used to cycle to work a lot, and then obviously COVID hit, and because he works for Reading University, and actually he doesn't cycle as much, but he will either walk or he'll get public transport, but it did bother me because we live in Reading, and Reading is a really busy town, and actually if I've walked past all the traffic at all, it's just so polluting. It's just so awful. And I'm kind of like, yeah, we've got cycle lanes, but actually that is just foul, and you are breathing that in. So what he tends to do is he'll cycle to the towpaths on the Thames, and he'll kind of go that way. And we've got the Kennet River as well. So he'll try and get to work on as many different places he can, go without, suffering that levels of pollution, because it is awful.
What he's done, he's had to change his behaviour to avoid the pollution, right? Yeah. It's no different in the EV market. So the whole point is about transforming the experience. So I listen to my CEO, James O'Neill, talk about this all the time at Paythru, that we have to find solutions that make things easier for people. And we're only going to do that if we use EV specialists, so people who have experienced what it's like to truly be an EV driver, suss out those pain points and then use the clever technology to create these platforms where it's just easy. You just turn up to the charger, you know where it is, you know if it's working or not, you use the data to make sure that that's fed into the app and talks to the vehicle or talks to the person. We've got so far to go, because even some of the best apps out there at the moment don't have the level of sort of open data that we need. We were at the EV show, the EV Summit in Oxford last week, and that was one of the topics that came up time and time again, is that open data. Without the data, we can't feed the apps. So I can see this being a big challenge, and we're about to expand into Europe. My whole next year is about getting Paythru with Eden 7 are hoping to be our partners for this. They help companies work out how to do ESG, so environmental sustainable governance, in a very progressive way, so it's actually beneficial to your business to do that. So I'm spending most of next year doing that, but we're not going to get our business to where we need to be until we simplify this experience of charging your car. It sounds so simple and yet so complex behind the scenes, and I think that's where I want to see us being hailed as kind of the technology company with the heart in the right place. We're trying to be as commendable as possible and work with partners. I'm quite strict on our partnering structure, so choosing partners that also have the same beliefs as us, and that's the only way we're going to affect change.
It's ethics and integrity, isn't it? I always say, that's where I come from. I try to be transparent. I'm a Yorkshire girl, it's kind of, I do what it says on the tin. I'm a Yorkshire girl. We just kind of say as it is, and actually, but I'm very, I've got a lot of morals and lots of ethics. So, and integrity. And I want to make sure that that's how what my business is seen as. I'm not coming in, I don't want to fleece anybody. I'm just not that kind of person. But it's the same with you. You're a lot bigger than my business. Do you know what I mean? We're quite small at the moment. So but you want everybody to actually see you doing the right thing for the right reasons, don't you?
Integrity is everything to me. There's this thing in the people know they can't pay me to say something if I don't agree, because unless it's justified and proven and pointing in the right direction, I don't want to be part of it. I do really feel integrity is key, and you attract businesses to work with you. Then you get clients who believe in you just by showing that you have heart, and what you're trying to do is intended as a sort of sustainable, profitable, progressive business. What's not to like?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes such a difference. Do you know, when you were talking about kind of the particulates and things like that, I was kind of thinking about, the amount of plastic that I know we're sort of going off on off topic slightly, but the amount of plastic that we use and the particulates that actually we're not just breathing in pollutants, are we? We're digesting particulates from the plastic that we're using. So, I feel that's kind of the whole thing about sustainability is kind of it's reduction, isn't it? It's change of behaviour and reduction in what in the ways that we're doing things.
And that needs systematic change. That needs everything being stripped back, reprogrammed. It's fine to just stick a few plasters on things and shuffle a few departments around to make stuff better. Or my personal bugbear, my least favourite thing of all, offset. So when people go, okay, I've done what I need to do. I've calculated everything. This is how dirty I am. How much is it going to cost to clean me up? And I'm like, what have you invested in? And half the time it's things like planting trees, but not working out where those trees are going to be planted. And so you're going to release all of your carbon in approximately 12 years again, because you're going to plant a tree that's either going to fall over and die and rot and then release, or you've planted a tree that's going to be cut down and used for chipboard or fencing, which of course will then not survive and released. And you've probably planted it in a place where that soil doesn't really like those types of trees. So you've kind of killed the substrate of the soil as well. So I would always encourage people, if you are offsetting, to find a partner. And this is why I think Eden 7 is a great shout, because if you work with them, they'll strip everything back for you and show you a sort of mirror. This is where you are. And then they'll work with kind of projects rather than just trees, plant trees. Yeah, I'd be very wary. That's one of the biggest greenwashing things out there, is we plant trees for everything we do, unless it's proven. So like I said before, integrity is key. If you found a tree planting scheme that's local and you trust them, absolutely brilliant. One I found when I was working up near Newcastle was they're planting trees in sacred places in schools and hospitals, because those trees will not be dug up. You know, when they're there, they're there. And it's community forests are another great scheme. So I think, yeah, integrity and investigation really other eye.
I was going to say investigation and just but a bit of research. Put a bit of research into it to make
Pull
sure
that
that
lid back. Don't get hoodwinked. Have a look.
Yeah, just don't feel that you're just, if you have to do it, if you feel you have to do it right.
Absolutely. Be proud of it. I think be really open about it. If you've partnered with someone and you believe in them, celebrate it jointly. Make sure that because that is how we will affect change. We will inspire other people by what we achieve on a daily basis.
And actually, I'm going to change what I said. It's not about feeling you have to do it. It's wanting to do it in the first place, isn't it? It's recognizing, right, okay, so I'm doing this thing here that's affecting these people, or on the other side. It's kind of balancing it out, isn't it? So actually what I need to do and what I want to do is to offset that in the right way.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the mission I'm on with the EV Café and with Paythru, is trying to inspire that change and accelerate that transition away from pollution and away from that old way of thinking that it doesn't matter what it costs, let's just get it done. Well, it does matter what it costs, actually, because everybody everywhere is trying to build these sustainable businesses. So why don't we find a way that we can help the environment and thrive? That sustainable development piece is often overlooked. Development isn't always bad.
No, exactly. And like we said, this is about what we're leaving for our kids and their kids moving forwards. Do you know what I mean? It's actually, we want to leave a good legacy rather than a bad legacy, don't we?
Yeah, I got asked about legacy in my role. I know it says Director of Future Fleet on the LinkedIn, because that's pretty much my job function, is helping fleets to transition. So work out what they've got, what they need, and how we can help. But more than that, it's about strategy. So my actual job title is Chief Strategy Officer. Okay. And the same with the EV Café. I support John and Paul and Johnny and Sam with the kind of strategic piece. How do we reach more people to help more people understand what's available in the EV community? But for me, it's about, if you just take a minute to measure, you can see ways of improvement that you probably didn't spot before. And I think it's those incremental changes that will get us to where we need to be.
Oh, Sarah, I've got to say, I love that phrase, because that is what I live by. Honestly, I don't know. You probably haven't seen. I sometimes do this. For those who are listening, you won't be able to see this, obviously. But behind me, there is a word called Kaizen. And basically, Kaizen means small changes. It's incremental changes. It's what I live by. I live by continuous improvement. Much to my husband gets a bit wary with it, because I'm always banging on about it. Do you know what I mean? But it's so important. We can do so much by doing just little things.
Yeah, general attrition. A big geology fan. I do love a good rock, and I bet you didn't think that would come up in a podcast. But if you think about it, a lot of our landscapes are shaped by tiny little other rocks. Yes. So a whole mountain can be worn away by a river that's got rocks in it. This blows my mind every time, and I think that's what's happening here. Is the dirty side of our industry is realizing that it has to change, and I don't want them to feel bludgeoned. I want them to feel invited, like, come along, come with us. We've already tested some things, but frankly, we need your investment. Is it time that we stop shaming BP and Shell and actually encourage them to come closer and see what we're doing? At the moment, I'm still underwhelmed. I still need to see more from them. I'm so impressed with the millions that's been invested in the public network from BP, again, at the EV Summit last week. I celebrated that. I clapped with them. But when I asked them if it was possible for drivers to download a VAT receipt, not sure. Don't think we're quite there yet. Why? Why are you not there yet? Why have you made a beautiful set of infrastructure that works on contactless but doesn't work for the biggest population of EV out there, which is going to be fleet? Why are we not putting fleet at the heart of everything we're doing? Because they will be our biggest users.
Absolutely. And were they not able? I take it they weren't able to answer that at all then.
You get it, yeah. It was one person turned to the other, said, "Do you want it?" And then they sort of looked back, and I still had the microphone and went, "Don't worry about it. It looks like we're not quite there yet."
Yeah. It's that, to me, it's that level of joined up thinking, isn't it? Like you say, they've done this massive, wonderful thing on one side, but not actually kind of thought about, what the knock-on effect of it. If we need to do these, do we need to do these things? Yes, we do. But it's again, it's probably going into that research and looking at the bigger picture. So, but
Yeah.
hopefully
We're coping at the moment. I think EV fleet is definitely coping. We're doing all right. We're out there. We're going around with our increasing numbers of electric vehicles. It's still very little percentage, 2 to 3% of the market share right now, but that's going to increase exponentially. We're already seeing queues at motorway services areas. Hats off to GridServe, who are doing a phenomenal job across the UK helping us with that support. The other thing is internationally, we're going to be moving around a lot more in these vehicles.
Yeah.
So having a mind on the future about how you can use your UK-based lifestyle in another country seamlessly is a very simplistic way of kind of moving around, but having the same user experience. And I think that's where we need to think about is not just individual use cases. People don't just magically step out the door, jump in their vehicle, go and do their work and then come home. There's so many things that go wrong in that process. Where do you find the next charger? How do you pay for that charger? What if you're not a member of that charger? What if you don't have a company credit card and you have to use your own card? How are you going to claim that energy back? You can't just take a picture of it.
Yeah.
It's a crazy world. And you're now with the rising energy costs, it can cost 40, 50 quid to do a recharge, and you're not going to want to kiss goodbye to that money anytime soon.
No. Is that how much it's costing you? Kind of, what would you say the cost compared to putting, like fuel in a car is? Have you noticed the difference, or is it that long ago since you actually drove a
No, of course, absolutely. So I worked it out. I had a family car, so it was sort of a £15,000 diesel at the time, and I worked out the costs for the MG ZS EV, and it was comparable in terms of total cost of ownership. So the amount I was paying for it per month, but then having cheaper electricity charging overnight at home at the time, that worked out completely break even. So win-win for me. And then the next car was the same. The Tesla's a little different just because I've paid a lot more to have, a fancy car. So the total cost of ownership is on the fence. But then I went for a lease. So I've got wrapped charging included. So every month I don't feel that pain of refueling my car because I've already paid for it because it's on a monthly fee that stays the same. So I really appreciate that when costs are fluctuating. I know exactly what I'm getting. I know I can get the energy from the places on the map and it's all included. And that makes my life a lot easier. So it's very, very comparable.
Oh, that's interesting to know actually, because I didn't realise that. So wrapped leasing, is that normal for EVs kind of through leasing companies?
I think you have to shop around. It's hard to find, and my mileage is so high that not everyone would have me.
Right.
But if you're kind of that average 7,000, 8,000 miles a year, a lease that includes charging is just fantastic. And even if it doesn't, it's still it's a good way to look at getting an electric car, is looking at a lease rather than an ownership model.
Okay, interesting. So I actually test drove my first two EVs last weekend. I was so excited.
What did you drive?
So the first one was an MG4. I'd kind of had my eye on that for some time, and then the second one was a Cupra Born. So I've got a number of others that I want to test drive because I want to. I didn't have a frame of reference for this. Do you know what I mean? Because I was kind of like, right, I've always driven petrol cars. I'm not a diesel driver, but I do drive petrol, and I don't want a big car because there's only three of us. And a lot of the cars, the EVs are quite big. So I've kind of researched all this. But the first two, because they're quite close to where I live. MG was an interesting experience, maybe not quite good as Cupra because of I think it was the sales team at both places. I'm not kind of dissing the sales team overall, but I think it was just a very different experience. And also because I'd never experienced regenerative braking. So, and actually, somebody else had spoken to me about this on the previous podcast, and also the lady who I was sat in with was explaining a little bit about it. The one at the Cupra show, where I was the salesperson at the Cupra place, was actually she found it a lot easier to explain things to me, and also I knew the roads better. So by the time I got into the Cupra, I had such a better experience in it, and I just was like, I just love this car. I love it. So and the power just blew me away.
At the end of it all, it's a new experience for all of us. People think I'm crazy because I learned in this country you still have to pass your full motorcycle exam on a petrol motorbike.
Do you?
even if you're not going to drive petrol. So I was always going to drive electric, but because it's based on the power output, you have to do the equivalent power. So I bought an electric motorbike having never ridden an electric motorbike, because you can't test drive them until you've passed your test.
No way.
So I get that, but that experience piece is so key. Like, we see all these shows every single year, and the most popular ones are when they do ride and drive. So you're allowed to either be in the vehicle or drive the vehicle, and then you just get that experience and just feel like, actually, this isn't too different after all. And mostly people that go electric, apart from that recharging element, they love the vehicles, they hate the charging. So if you're lucky enough to have a home charger, by far the cheapest way to refuel your vehicle, fantastic, wouldn't hesitate. If you don't have a home charger, I also still wouldn't hesitate, because you can use the public network. However, that is evolving all the time. So I think it's that balance between what are you willing to do, what's your available options, and also just keeping an eye on where public charging is coming. They're popping up in supermarkets and car parks everywhere now. So you can do what we call graze charging. So you go there for a couple of hours, put some energy back in, and then that pays is equivalent of the miles that you used to get there.
Right. Blimey. Okay. Well, so I wanted to just ask you. So I've got still got a few questions for you. But how do you feel? So obviously you are with the EV Café. You are just such a group of amazing spokespeople. Is that the right phrase? Yeah, you're a spokesperson, and you've got a really good voice. Where do you feel that you're making that difference? How are you making a difference to kind of the whole EV experience for people?
We're making a difference because we're being honest, and we're putting that sort of heart and integrity in our message. So we're not there to profiteer off a thriving industry. We're there to encourage people to come along and just see what the chat is about. Maybe we'll dispel some myths that you couldn't get answered when you're at the car showroom because they're trying to sell you a vehicle. You know, if you take the conversation away from the sales floor, we can talk about renewable energy, recharging infrastructure, the vehicles themselves, fleet, leasing. Each one of us has nearly 20 years experience in our own respective industry. So that's a lot of wealth of knowledge that we're willing to give away. And then with our brilliant sponsors as well, we've got everything covered.
It's just so interesting to listen to you. And so I am going to talk to you about the article that my own news hound, Chris Hunter, actually shared with me, and then I forwarded it on to John Curtis about this article that was in the Daily Mail. Now I'm sorry if people are listening and you're a Daily Mail fan, then that's great. On it, you're watching and you're a Daily Mail fan. But I was kind of thinking, this title, I'm going to read it now. It says, weight of electric vehicles could cause catastrophic damage and lead to car parks collapsing. Engineers warn Britain's parking facilities were not designed for hulking battery cars. So that is like a clickbait title to me. My son, my 17-year-old, will go, that's just clickbait, Mum. But you know, what were your thoughts about that one? I have my own thoughts about that, the kind of the article itself. But what did you think?
Well, I flipped and flopped because it's true. A lot of those legacy car parks don't fit. I can't get my car in there anyway because it's so narrow. I can't even get in. So I'm not going to be collapsing that car park anytime soon because it's too small for me to fit in anyway. The second thing is, my car's really heavy. It's like 2.5 tons. But as is an equivalent size petrol or diesel, like a Land Rover or something. So again, it doesn't make any sense from that perspective. If you had 10 Land Rovers or 10 Teslas, it's going to weigh the same. So I don't get that argument. There is something in it, though, about the efficiency of it. If we're going to continue to make these electric vehicles with the longer ranges, until we get to that battery development stage where the weight is different, I'm not even sure if that'll ever come.
You know,
we can just imagine these vehicle weights aren't going to change. So it's much more of a kind of building design question than anything else. And almost hats off to them to do the clickbait because it's got everyone talking, that's for sure.
It has, hasn't it? I suppose my thinking was, from continuous improvement, this is my brain going off in those tangents I was talking about to you earlier before we started recording. I was kind of thinking, if car park, the owners of car parks, whether they're owned by councils or whether they're owned by private companies, if they've not carried out any health and safety checks or kind of strength checks, we're looking at similar things that happened in Italy where the bridges collapsed. So before COVID, we drove over In our petrol vehicle, we drove all the way over to Italy, and it was I don't know whether you remember in 2019, it was when that bridge in Genoa, was it Genoa? Yeah, it was Genoa. That it collapsed. You know, are we looking at that? So is it the fact that we've not put any effort into recognising this, or because over the years you can't really compare a 1972 Cortina with the cars that we've got on the road, whether they're battery electric vehicles or whether they're regular, you know, ICE vehicles, you know, combustion engine vehicles. Surely they must have done these tests. They can't just say they're all going, oh, I thought they're all going to collapse now. Do you know what I mean? Go, come on, prove to us, why have you not done the work in these years? And, you know, and recognise that's, I'm getting on my orange box now, aren't I? But
Well, orange box is very seasonal. I like it. I think the thing to remember is here in the UK, our engineering practices are so much higher than many other countries in the world. You know, one of the reasons why we're so slow at building anything is a commendable reason. It's because we want to get it right. We want to build infrastructure that isn't going to fail. So everything that's being commissioned from scratch is going to have strict. But you're right. Have all of those car parks been revisited for safety checks? I don't know. No. I actually just don't know the answer. But I do know that cars have got seatbelts these days. So it does make me hope that we're not mimicking everything from the 70s.
I know. I mean, you would really think that they'd done some work in the meantime. You don't just, surely, you know, when you're looking at roads and the way that kind of some of the roads start getting a little bit of subsidence and things like that, there's got to be monitoring in the same way of kind of car parks. So I'd put a question mark you know, around this clickbait title. I get where they're coming from, because I think it's the British Parking Association, wasn't it, this one? So I get it. I do get it. And actually, in a previous life, I worked in companies that kind of provided the entry and exit barriers to car parks. So you know, I've seen some of this before. So we'll just have to see. But I thought that was quite an interesting that Chris brought up. He shared it with me and Michelle, that the kind of we all work in full circle. And literally I was just thinking, oh my God. So I sent it straight on to John Curtis, and I just thought I'll let John kind of see what he thinks, and then he passed it on to you guys. So it was great to hear it being discussed this morning, because I found it really, really interesting.
Well, thank you for sending it in. That we invite everyone to send in these stories, because the EV Café isn't there to pretend like we know everything. Far from it. We're actually there to invite new news. That's why we started doing the news sessions on a Friday, because I don't read the script that John reads out, because I want to hear the news and react to it organically. And that's what we should all be doing, because we're in our own little bubbles and our own little jobs and our own industries. And actually, if we share a little more and just admit that we don't quite get it and we don't quite know, it's just refreshing. It just brings us back to that integrity and heart. Anybody that says they know everything, don't trust them.
No, it's you know, and like you say, it is just everybody contributing to this, isn't it? Because we can all actually do something we've all got bits of knowledge, and it's about pulling it all together to make one, you know, it helps people make more informed decisions about the way that they want to move forwards towards net zero, or, you know, whatever they want to do in their lives. I just think,
well, even if profit is what they want, what they want, I'm all for it. You go nuts, but do it ethically.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, I want to run my own business, so of course I want it to, you know, do well, but I want to do it in the right way, definitely.
Yeah, I want to be proud. I really like that point about legacy. I'm conscious we've probably run out of time, but just to kind of say about that legacy piece, I'd like in 10, 20 years to look back and go, I built that, we made that, this is the impact. But almost more than that, I'd almost like to say in 10, 20 years, haha, look at that, isn't it rubbish? Look how great things are now, which is already happening. It terrifies me that what I was most proud of 3-4 years ago, I now go, oh, we probably should have done a few things differently, but we did the best we could at the time, and it was award winning. You know, it's a beautiful thing that we built, but at the same time, it moves so fast. And I think if you have if you have a plan, that's great. But if you're willing to change the plan, that's
Absolutely.
better.
It's about that flexibility and being ready to kind of embrace very much. From my side, it's about embracing change and getting people to kind of recognise its importance.
But don't you see that's what you're doing? That's what you are doing so well with Full Circle. You have this incredible ability to pull people together in a room and they listen to you. You captivate people. That's why I wanted to be on your podcast, because it works both ways. You get all of us on, but we want to hear you too. And you are one of these facilitators that will make change happen faster. So for that, I'm here for you.
I'm going to give you a virtual hug now. Thank you very much. Oh, listen. So,
I'll take it. Oh my God.
Well, did we hug the other week? I don't know whether we did. We might not have hugged, did we?
Yeah,
we'll have another one soon. So, just to wrap up, where can people find you? So, what's Paythru's website to start off with? So, is it paythru.com or?
Oh yeah, just Google that. You'll find us. It's Paythru. So it's spelt slightly differently. But I would just say come to LinkedIn. Come find me on LinkedIn. It's spelt Sara, Sara, and Sloman. And it's a very chatty forum. I just want people to be open with me, tell me their problems, and hopefully we can help find a solution together.
And do, if people are watching or listening and you don't listen to the EV Café news on a Friday at 10 o'clock, it's definitely worth watching. This morning, John Curtis had pom-poms on and poor Sarah could hardly watch the screen because she was trying not to absolutely pee herself laughing. Didn't you? That was so funny.
Well, I had a disco in the background. I had a little Christmas tree vibe going on. It was great fun. But I think if something you absolutely must do is watch the news on a Friday. We do a monthly webinar as well. It's a different theme each time. Different sponsors come on and talk about their issues. But what everyone says, unresounding, is that we've got a community feel. So it's about, being mates, talking about something that's very important. If it wasn't important, we wouldn't do it, but it is. And our numbers are swelling, which shows us we're onto something. It shows us that people don't trust the information that's out there and that they need somebody impartial to kind of pick it apart and go through it in a fun way. And that's what we do. We always have this silly thing at the end. It's just funner. It's not even a word. It just annoys people when we say it out loud.
Honestly. Yeah, it's definitely fun, especially when you've got John and everybody. And you, like I say, you guys are fabulous. So listen, I just want to say thank you ever so much for your time. It's been an absolute joy talking to you. I really, really appreciated it. I definitely want to be kind of keeping in touch with you guys because you're just doing it. You're an inspiration. You really are.
Well, thank you, Liz, and you'll be welcome in the fold anytime.
Yeah,
one of us.
love it. So, on that note, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. Thank you, Sarah, and I shall see everybody next time. See you later. Bye. You've been watching Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell icon, and you'll receive all of our weekly videos. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye.